Thank you for tuning into our podcast. We are coming to you from Holyoke, Massachusetts. I am your host, Carrie, and joining me is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of the historical tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Camus. He offers both public and private tours, as well as presentations of the local canal systems, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, as well as various parks and streets in Holyoke, South Hadley, and Chicopee, Mass. Now you actually lead these tours and give these presentations yourself, is that correct?
That's correct, and this one's always on the tour. It's right in the thick of things.
And so today he'll be educating us on the Whiting Paper Mill. So what are the many locations of the Whiting Paper Mill?
Okay, the Whiting Paper Mill would end up having 3 different locations around the Holyoke area. Mill number 1 was his first mill, obviously. Now it started out at the start of the first level canal. It's a very old mill. Mill number 2 was just south of the Lyman Mill, and that one was built in 1871, so it came 7 years after he had built the 1864 mill number 1. So he had 2 going, and then he ended up building another one along the Chicopee Center Canal, so that was in mill number 3. So he's in 3 different locations, so that would show you that he had a lot of paper production going. This was the biggest paper mill in the world. And what we're going to learn today, what are many of the products that he ended up making. And then we're going to talk about the history of the Whiting family. And then we're going to talk about what production was like at the Whiting's mill. Now, what's left is the Whiting number 1 has a few buildings left, not too many, sadly. That's the original 1864 mill. The mill number 2 has only a storage building left, and that's it. But he ended up buying the entire Lyman Mill and adding an addition to it. And so if you count that Lyman Mill in the addition, then it's all still there, and that's a very old place. So the Whiting's Mill number 2 was gigantic and included not only the 1871 construction, but his buy of the Lyman Mill and the addition he put onto it, which is about half more beyond the original size of the Lyman. So that's enormous. And then in Chicopee, I believe his mill is now gone. I'm not positive. Okay, the products, of course, it was a paper mill, and of course they made a lot of their own paper over and over again. They made wonderful paper, and they made ledger paper inside of, and they also made linen paper out of cotton, and they had a lot of their name products for themselves. For instance, they had Whiting's standard linen ledger and record paper, with all different sizes and all different dimensions to it. They had machine handmade papers in different colors with different finishes to it. They had antique parchment papers and all different looks to it, finishes. They had ruled and plain writing paper, whether it would be folded or not. They had plated paper. They had wedding folios, and this was, of course, for making display of your wedding information beforehand and afterwards. Remember, you want to send out invitations, and they'd make up a certain look to the paper, size to the paper, envelopes to go with it. And after the wedding, you send out thank you notes. So they'd make up a whole portfolio of wedding paper. Then they made all different kinds of colored papers and envelope paper, so forth. And then they made linen fabric paper made out of cotton, very, very fine writing. Right, and then lots of envelopes types, and they were made typewriter paper, which is very common paper, of course. So they made a lot of paper. To be the biggest paper mill in the world, you need a great volume of mills, and you have a need for a lot of products to go with it. And they surely did that.
And quickly, before we continue with the rest of our interview, just to fill our listeners in, if you want to find out more information or sign up for any of his various tours, you can check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org. In there, he has both videos of the various stops along each tour and also past and present photos of the historical sites throughout as well. And if you're interested in setting up a private tour, you can email him directly at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. And they are perfect for fun, educational, outdoor activities for the whole family or for your group parties, especially those special occasions and get-togethers. And they are also good just for getting outdoors for the day. So getting back to our interview, tell us about the extensive history of the Whiting family and their business endeavors.
All right, William Whiting's father came from Connecticut to Douglas, Massachusetts to Holyoke, and he started up a coal company with one of the other sons. And William Whiting was another one of the sons. He became an accountant for the Holyoke Paper Company, a company that started in 1857. And as an accountant, you don't see production, but he must have been looking at that production, because by 1864, only 7 years later after that company, he started his own company, the William Whiting Paper Mill, Mill Number 1, down by the river. And it must have grown and grown, because another 7 years after that, in 1864, he started his own company, and he would end up buying, in 1927, the Lyman Mill, and made an extension on it. He took up a whole city block for paper production at one location, and then a half city block at another location. And then in Chicopee, he probably had a big mill going too. This was gigantic. And so his mills made all those many products I told you about. And his life was such that he became mayor of Holyoke for a few terms. He also worked for the state government for a few years, and he was very well respected around Holyoke. The name William Whiting to everyone almost synonymizes what Holyoke was in the 1800s. And so his family also not only owned that coal company, they started buying up homes, so forth and so on. He would live on Appleton Street between Chestnut and Elm Street himself, and then his brother would live, Samuel Whiting would live up on, I believe it was Oak Street, and he'd have a big house there. So this was a successful family. Their family stone in Forest Hill was a very large one, and they were all grouped together.
And what was production like at the Whiting Mills?
Okay, production inside this paper mill was somewhat similar to what you see in other mills, where on the top floor you'd put the paper that was ready to be start to be made or pulped up, and then on the second floor down, you start, after it was dry, you start cutting it, and then you calendar it. The calendar means that you thin it out to the dimensions or width that it's going to have. Now, one thing they didn't do much of was they were not big into the cotton fine paper. They were mostly into the pulp paper, and that might be why he located himself at the Connecticut River, where the the logs were coming in. Now, his mill number 2 and so forth, of course, I told you in 1927 he bought out the Lyman Mill, so his production in those mills was somewhat similar. So these were up to 5 stories, this mill number 2, and he would do it the same way. He would have the top floor where it start to dry out, and then as you come down, you start to do the various steps on it. Now, in this mill, he did something different. He started making cotton-based paper. So in mill number 1, he was mostly doing the wood pulp, but at mill number 2, he was doing the cotton-based paper. So you, of course, as you come down, you have the picking rooms, and the carton were done where you move impurities, and then as you come down, you'd thin it out, and so the calendar room and the cutting room was on the second floor down, right? And you need the engine rooms, of course, and And his mill number, let's call it 2A, or the addition to the liner mill, he was doing even different things. There was mostly for storage, but there was some production taking place. Right? And here he based it also on the product of cotton paper, and he produced it very similar to the way that he did in his mill number 2. I don't know what was happening in his mill in Chicopee, but it might have been either pulp or cotton. I would guess it would have been cotton-based. So by doing this, he was able to make a lot of different products through the years. And he's one of the few manufacturers that went from paper pulp of wood into cotton and had both going at the same time.
And thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours. And we want to thank our listeners again for tuning in. And you can tune to a large selection of our other podcasts and much more at his website. Again, that is holyokecanaltour.org. And again, you can email him directly for